Warning. The following video contains strong language that some viewers may find offensive or disturbing.
What fictional character do you feel bad for the most? Probably Captain Rex. He spent 3 years fighting for the wrong side without even knowing until it was too late. Then all his brothers turned on him. And his one friend through it all was Ahsoka, who he had to say goodbye to. Not knowing Anakin or Obi-Wan's fate, but knowing that all of his clone friends had turned evil. Or died. Woodhouse the butler from Archer. Treated like shit throughout the whole series by pretty much everyone. Missed out on his last chance to see his brother because of his asshole boss. Reduced to living in an empty pool. Used as an online prostitute. Then died off-screen a penniless and unloved heroin addict. Sirius Black. Born into a psycho-supremacist family. Accused of ratting out his BFF. Rots in Azkaban for 12 years. For a crime he didn't commit. Goes on the run. And dies a wanted criminal. Damn. He def got a raw deal and was always my favorite. He was finally redeemed and happy only to have it ripped away by getting killed in front of his godson. His wand was the first one I looked to buy when I went to Universal. Herschel Green in the Walking Dead comic. Greater than, lost his eldest kids to walkers. Goes to the prison. Youngest kids get beheaded and then during the attack on the prison. His last son gets shot and killed as they're trying to escape. Gives up on life and begs to be killed. Less than there are so many characters you could say the same for. But I'm currently rereading it and his character is among the most tragic. Thomas from the Maze Runner series of novels. That kid is put through a ridiculous amount of emotional and physical trauma only to have everything he's ever done be destroyed by himself. And then there's poor Chuck's sad face. He literally just wanted to be happy and didn't do anything to hurt anyone. The beginning of the Fever Code seriously made me feel for Thomas though too. Alucard from Castlevania. Alucard will always annoy me because I didn't realize until SSBU that his name is just Dracula backwards. If it helps. That isn't his real name. Adrian Fahrenheit Tepes is his actual name. I believe he just takes the name Alucard in opposition of his father. Also, the name Alucard originated in the 1943 movie Son of Dracula. If I recall correctly, there's even a scene where a character writes Alucard out and points at the letters in reverse order for the big Dracula reveal. It's pretty cheesy, but the Castlevania games were pretty damn cheesy too. John Marston. John. His wife and his young son lived life on the run in an outlaw gang. It begins to tear itself apart under the pressure of Pinkerton detectives. Spoilers ahead, he's left for dead by the gang's leader. But John pulls through with the help of his dying friend. He sees a chance for his family to run and try to live straight. And they do. John takes up legal work as a ranch hand and a bounty hunter. He gets bank loans approved and now has the money to build a house and barn on a property of his own. John and his wife have the official wedding they never had. He had time to spend with his son and be the dad he never could be before. And the loans get paid off. Life was good. Until the Pinkertons arrived. They held his wife and son captive. In exchange for their release, they make John hunt down the remaining gang members. One by one he does. Finally taking down his old gang leader with help from the US Army. John rode back to his farm and family. His old outlaw days truly buried in the past. Weeks later the army soldiers and Pinkertons converged on John's farm and opened fire. It was now his turn. His family fought their way to their barn. And at John's request they escaped on horseback. John left the barn to face the men. And he was cut down in a hail of gunfire. I also feel really bad for Jack and in turn, John and Abigail as well. Jack must have felt so crushed to lose his father and his mother so brutally and suddenly. That sort of trauma would have messed him up real bad. And set him up in a violent path of vengeance that he might never have come back from. And despite John and Abigail's efforts to let go of their previous life of murdering and stealing in order to provide their son a better life. That is all undone by some assholes from their past. Who indirectly cause him to become the very thing his parents hoped he wouldn't become. It's depressing really. Any citizen in the same city as a superhero. At some point that shit has to get old. Honey, an evil villain is going to release toxic gas at 5 p.m. if Pickle Man doesn't surrender himself. Are the gas masks in the kitchen cabinet or in the RV? Edited to add, I legit pulled Pickleman out of my ass and didn't know it was a real thing. Sorry for the unintentional reference. God, can you imagine the car insurance rates? Your deductible doesn't cover being stepped on by the Hulk. This is the third time this year you've claimed your car was used as a projectile weapon by Superman. Maybe park in a different lot? Anyway, your rates are going up again. Not to mention 8-month waiting list for windshield replacements. Well, if Dr. Doom had announced this was going to happen, we could have stocked up. Really, mostly any second-born child of a royal family. 'Cause the first one, this is my heir, they shall inherit the throne. And the second one, it's like, oh. And this Bob. And then wonder why Bob is such a mess. All the clone troopers. I feel so bad for them. They were just used by the Republic and then just thrown away after the Clone Wars. Sidney Prescott. She's had, what, 8 different serial killers after her? Pretty much everyone she's known or dated has been brutally murdered. And all because she did nothing. She did nothing to deserve a life of torment. John Coffey from the Green Mile. Him and Edward Delacroix too. The one who talked to mice. But the aspect of a young guard thought it would be funny not to wet the sponge. Less than E greater than a word. The Green Mile is my favorite movie. And one of my favorite books. It completely changed my stance on the death penalty. I have seen it at least 10 times. And bawl like a little bitch every time he says. He killed them with their love. With their love for each other. I feel for Delacroix, but he really did some fucked up shit to end up on the mile. I feel the book really presses your ability for empathy. More so than the movie. The movie doesn't reveal that he raped and murdered a young girl. Then burned down the building trying to hide the evidence. Killing several more people. Still, no one deserves what he got. Bitterbuck got kind of a shit deal too. He accidentally killed someone in a bar fight. Which I don't think warrants the death penalty since it was accidental. I fucking hate Percy. Not only is he cruel, but he delights in his cruelty. The way he kills Mr. Jingles for no other reason than to cause pain. And laughs about it. Makes my blood boil every time. I think John could see all the people he was eventually going to hurt. Vulnerable people in a mental institution. And stopped him before he could. That one lady who gets picked up by the pterodactyls in Jurassic World and then almost drowns before getting picked up again only to be eaten by a mosasaurus. All she did was say her fiancé couldn't have a bachelor party. The little match girl. She is homeless, starving, freezing, and lonely. Then she dies. My mom thought that it was too sad. So when she would tell me this story, she'd change the ending and tell that just as her last match was about to go out, a woman saw the girl, took her home, gave her a nice bath and a room, and adopted her. Years later, when I was old enough, she told me the actual ending and that she had changed it on purpose. The girl squirrel from The Sword in the Stone animated film. If you haven't seen it, the protagonist Arthur gets magically turned into a squirrel and a girl squirrel falls in love with him. When Arthur got turned back into a human and left her all heartbroken and crying, it genuinely upset me. As a young kid, it was one of my first experiences of feeling real pity. And it's stuck with me ever since. It wouldn't have hit as hard if Merlin didn't note that they pick a mate for life. So a little boy's training lesson left that girl squirrel to be heartbroken for the rest of her life. The kid's like 12? How long do squirrels live anyway? Get the hell back in that tree and live a happy life with that girl squirrel, damn it. King of England can wait a few years. Jax Friend in Titanic. Imagine, you sneak onto a world-class cruise with your best friend in the whole world. Only for him to completely ignore you for a mediocre girl. Only for you to fucking die when the ship sinks. Klaus from the Umbrella Academy. Literally gets kidnapped and tortured for like 2 days without any of his siblings noticing. Also brought up seeing dead people, which would obviously screw up any child. Was locked in a cemetery for hours, etc. No one really cared about him and just saw him as this stoner and couldn't see the whole time he's basically calling out for help. Also Dave's sad face. Yeah, really felt for him when he started to finally control his power only for the rest of them to not believe him. I think we've all felt the hopelessness of not being believed at some point in our lives. Eeyore depression sucks. I was scrolling specifically for this comment and I also remembered this. Which makes me feel a little better. He had friends who liked and accepted just the way he was. And included him on all their adventures together. Everyone deserves friends like that. Neville Longbottom. His parents are alive but were tortured into insanity by Bellatrix when he was a baby. He never mentions them, and there's only one scene in the books where Harry gets a proper glimpse into Neville's life. During a visit to the St. Mungo's hospital, Neville's parents are completely lost and don't even seem to recognize their son. I just find it incredibly poignant that what is ostensibly a comic relief character has such a tragic backstory. But in spite of that, in the face of deadly adversity, overcomes his fears and becomes a hero. The Monster from Frankenstein, the novel, greater than. The monster is born and Frankenstein immediately runs away because he made him too ugly, less than. The monster literally only wants to be loved. Greater than, he falls in love with a family who then reject him when they meet him. He goes mad with grief and destroys their home. Then flees in shame. He finds his creator and asks him to make one more creature. A female, like him, whom he can be with. When his creator refuses and ultimately dies, he declares that he has no purpose anymore and swears he will burn himself to death so that their cycle of misery can be over. He states that he will relish the flames as they kill him because the agony of death will bring him sweet release. Less than. The Squirrel in Ice Age. Poor fellow just wants his acorn. We were just watching this with my 5-year-old and my husband says he's some kind of squirrel rat. Oh my gosh, that's why his name's Scrat. And I just laughed because I never realized that either. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. See you next time.